Hello everyone, in this video we are going to discuss what inverse function is. Let's quickly check. So before, when we talk about function, we always talk function is the way we build up the relation between input and output. Sometimes we just simply call this x and y, right? So let's see example here. For example, I have a student name, and then this function is looking for his or her ID. So that's a function. So, and sometimes we just use function notation to represent this relation, and the x here basically just means input. And the situation here is we can, instead of using student name to find ID, we can also use his or her ID to look for student's name. And so basically we just reverse this process, and in this one we just call this reverse process we call inverse function, and we do have a notation for that, which is f inverse of x. So this one, this little notation here, -1 here, meaning f inverse. Please remember the name for that is the f inverse, not f of -1 or whatsoever. So this is called f inverse. And this means my original input becomes my output. And my original output becomes my new input. So we kind of switch the relation between x and y. So let's quickly check one example here. Now I have a function table. As you can see here, we have a different value of x and matching to different value of y. How can we create an inverse function table for this one? So as we mentioned before, inverse function is basically we switch the position of x and y. So now we just, as we mentioned before, my original output becomes my input. My original input becomes my output. So will become, so output here is 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. Then they match into original input, which now becomes my output. But how do we write the notation here? In function, we always prefer to use x to represent the input. So no matter what situation, we just use x to represent this. But remember, this x here is actually originally our output in original function. And this, since we take the inverse of this, so we just simply write down as f inverse x, which is matching to our original input. Now let's work on the two questions here to review this concept again. Again, now we have a table. So we are going to use this table to find out the values here. So let's see the first one, f of -4. Since x is -4, so I just look for the table here, -4 matching to 9, so this value is 9. And this one, f of 6, x is 6, so matching to -4, so we just use to find it. Now let's check next one. Next one can be a little bit tricky because next one is f of -1, no, f inverse of -4. So as we mentioned, when we say inverse, meaning this relation is switched. So original output is my input. So this is actually represent original output with which original y, right? So that's why instead of starting with x, this time we know is this actually original y. So we go to the y power -4, or we search it, it's going to be 6. Again, f inverse of -10, this is the original y as -10. So we go here, -10, matching to 8. So this answer is 8. Okay, let's do one more practice. Let's work on the graph. So this time we are looking at the graph for 4 values here. We're looking for 4 values, and let's look at the graph. So the first one is f of 4. Again, that means x is 4. So how do we start? Since x is 4, so we start with x axis, and this is 4 here. And since the graph is under the bottom, so we just go to trace the graph to see where do they intersect at the point here. And then we trace where is the -6. It's going to be -6. And for this one, again, whenever you see the inverse notation here, that means, oh, the xy switched. So my original output is my new input. So this actually stands for, again, original output, original y. So Well, this time we are going to start with y-axis. We look for the y here, -4, and then we matching to the x value, and where does it intersect, which is 3. So this is a 3. And now it's f inverse 4, so we go back to, the y-axis 4 here, then we go back to trace the graph, then go down, this is our -1. Last one, f inverse 6, again, you go to start with y-axis 6, then go back to trace the x, which is -2. Okay, so this is how do we use the graph to figure out the values. I hope this video is helpful. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon.